The storm began without warning. Across the void between dying stars, the beacon of Karen Reach flickered once, and then the light went out. For 6 centuries its signal had burned steady, a flame of faith and navigation, guiding merchant fleets and pilgrim convoys through the roiling tempest of the ghoul stars. Now there was only silence. No distress vox, no flare, no trace of its choir, just the empty hum of the Astronomican fading into static. To the Imperium, one beacon's silence meant little. To the Emperor's faithful it was a wound in the sky, and to the crew of the strike vessel Vigil of Asterion, dispatched under sealed inquisitorial writ to investigate, it was a summons into damnation. When they broke warp above Karen Reach, they found the beacon still standing, its spire torn open, its light extinguished not by failure but by something deliberate. The air shimmered with remnants of void discharge. Bodies floated in orbit, their skin peeled away in spirals that looked less like torture and more like scripture. Something had learned to read flesh. And somewhere beneath the ruined tower the beacon still pulsed, too faint to see, but alive enough to hear. If you're drawn to stories where light dies screaming and faith becomes its own form of decay, where the Imperium's silence is more frightening than its rage, then stay. Subscribe, share, and let this voice reach further than the beacon ever could, because in the far future, even the stars themselves are flayed for their light. The void was not silent when the Vigil of Asterion tore through it. The storm had teeth. Radiation lightning crackled across the prow as if reality itself were gnashing at the ship's Geller field, each discharge echoing like laughter in the dark. The warp's residue clung to the vessel even after transition, spectral currents flowing along its hull like the ghosts of drowned suns. Captain Sarah Vorn watched from the observation dais, her reflection split across the glass by the lightning's flash. She was a soldier of the Astra Militarum before the Ordo Xenos took her, a survivor of places where faith meant little more than keeping your hand steady when the world screamed around you. Yet here, as the beacon world of Karen Reach hung ahead like a dead eye in the void, even she felt something heavy coil behind her ribs. "Signal integrity?" she asked. The Vox officer's fingers danced over his runes, every keystroke answered by a pulse of static. "The Astronomican is weak, Captain. Fading through interference. Karen Reach is emitting nothing. He hesitated, his augmetic eye flickering. "Not silence, ma'am. Just absence. The kind you can feel." The bridge lights dimmed as the ship's machine spirit adjusted to the interference. It moaned faintly through the bulkheads, a sound that made the crew cross themselves without realizing it. The scent of incense mingled with ozone. Somewhere deep in the vessel, a servitor began to whisper the litanies of illumination backward, as though pleading for the light to come back. Vorn ignored the chill along her spine. "Take us into orbit. Lock sensors on the beacon tower." The void around Karen Reach seethed like a storm trapped in glass. Fractured asteroids circled the world like prayer beads, each one glimmering with pale aurora where the stormlight struck it. But the planet itself was still, a marble of black cloud and lightning veins, no oceans, no movement, no life. And there, rising from its equatorial plateau, was the beacon, a spire of impossible scale, its design part cathedral, part weapon, and part wound. The upper tiers were hollowed open as if by claws or precision fire. Jagged ribs of ferrocrete jutted out into the storm like the bones of a saint's reliquary torn apart. Around it, fragments of orbiting debris shimmered faintly with electrical discharge. The ship's tech priest, Magos Real, leaned forward on his mechanical limbs, the blue glow of his ocular implants strobing with data. Structural integrity, 91%. Energy readings inconsistent with deactivation. Something still breathes within the relay core. Vorn's jaw tightened. "I thought the light was dead." "The light, yes. The heart, no." For a moment no one spoke. Then a new tone joined the static. A low rhythmic pulse, barely audible, like the throb of a heartbeat buried beneath kilometers of rock. It vibrated through the hull. Every lumen flickered once Vorn turned. "Is that external?" The Magos cocked his head, the servo motors in his neck whining softly. "It is the beacon, Captain." "But inverted. The frequency is broadcasting backward, like a reflection trying to remember itself." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. A few whispered the Emperor's name. Vorn felt the deck tremble under her boots, the ship's spirit recoiling against whatever touched its sensors. She didn't blame it. The beacon world was not dead. It was waiting, Prep the drop shuttle, she said. 12-man strike detail. I want boots on the ground in 20. The storm thickened as the shuttle broke through the upper atmosphere, promethium flames trailing from its descent thrusters. The world below was a wasteland of glassy plains and petrified lightning scars, the clouds lit from within by the pale glow of trapped electrical fire. Static crawled across the Vox, swallowing every prayer into white noise. Vorn sat strapped in beside her second, Lieutenant Dace Harrow, a man too young to already look that old. He stared at the flickering pict feed on his wrist slate, an image of the beacon spire growing larger as they approached. Looks like someone peeled it, he muttered. Vorn didn't ask what he meant, but she saw it too. The outer walls of the spire were stripped of plating in long, clean spirals, as if the structure's skin had been flayed away in an act of reverent precision. The pattern wasn't random. It was beautiful, in the way only madness can be. The shuttle shuddered hard as lightning struck close, bright enough to sear after-images behind their visors. Geller residue still bleeding from the upper atmosphere, the pilot called. Never seen anything like it. Feels like flying through memory. Hold formation, Vorn ordered. We land at the spire's base. When the landing gear touched down, the first thing they heard was wind, thin, metallic, carrying the echo of something far away and almost human. The ground was slick glass etched with concentric circles of fused sand where the beacon's light had once burned brightest. The spire towered above them, vanishing into the storm clouds, its surface glistening with condensation that smelled faintly of blood and oil. Vorn stepped out into the open, her armor's seals hissing. For a moment she simply stared upward. Somewhere within that colossal structure, something still pulsed. It felt less like a machine's beat and more like breath. Magos scanned the outer shell. Rill's servo skulls whirred into the air, casting beams of red light across the structure's flayed surface. Symbols emerged beneath the grime, patterns burned into the metal itself. Not words, not runes. Spirals within spirals winding inward toward the base doors. It's a litany, the Magos murmured. A prayer carved in geometry. Can you read it? Not yet. But it is written in the cadence of pain. Vorn touched the hilt of her sidearm and looked toward the entrance. The storm howled through the beacon's hollow frame, the sound almost forming a word. It sounded like welcome. She drew her weapon. Form line. We go in. The beacon's doors opened on their own. The doors yawned open with the solemn grace of a cathedral confessing its last sin. Cold air rushed outward, air that had not moved in decades, carrying with it the coppery tang of oxidized blood and something else beneath it, the sterile sweetness of sanctified oils. The strike team's visors adjusted automatically, filtering the dim interior light until the vast antechamber took form. The beacon's interior was built to mimic devotion. Massive columns carved with the Imperial Aquila rose to the ceiling, their wings spread in fractured majesty. Candles still burned in their sockets, though their flames were black, flickering without heat. Rows of devotional servitors stood frozen at the pews, their mouths stretched wide in a permanent voiceless scream. Wax had pooled at their feet, congealing around the remnants of human hands used to steady them long ago. Emperor protect, Harrow whispered, and his breath ghosted inside his visor. Magos Rill moved among the servitors, his mechadendrites flicking through the air like curious insects. Power readings are faint but persistent. These machines have not decayed naturally. They were suspended, like a prayer held in the throat. Vorn swept her lamp across the floor. The marble tiles glistened as though wet, each etched with scripture too small to read. Her boots stuck faintly as she walked, the residue clinging in translucent strings. It was not oil, Magos, she said quietly. Confirm the substance. Riel extended a probe from his wrist. The needle drew a single drop and analyzed it in silence. Organic. Hematic composition, preserved through unknown means. The ratio suggests hundreds of donors. Vorn's face did not move. Blood. Blood arranged, the Magos corrected softly. Blood consecrated. Something stirred in the shadows above, just the whisper of movement. The team's laser guns rose in unison, beams cutting through the air. At the top of the archway, something hung from a chain. No, dozens of somethings. Figures flayed of skin but still draped in their priestly robes. Their bones fused into the ceiling as part of the structure. Their rib cages were open lanterns filled with faint blue glow. The storm outside flashed through the open dome, illuminating the chamber like a heartbeat. Harrow swallowed hard. Are they strung for worship? Rill's lenses clicked and refocused. Negative. Observation indicates functional purpose. Each body is connected to a filament leading downward. Into what? Demagos tilted his head, listening to the faint hum beneath the floor. Power source. Or choir. The word lodged in the captain's mind like shrapnel. She'd seen plenty of heresy in her time. Xenos experiments, Warpborne anomalies. But this was something different. There was a pattern here. A devotion. Form 2 lines, Vorn ordered. We moved toward the core. As they advanced deeper, the air grew heavier, resonant with that same pulse they'd heard from orbit. It wasn't just sound, it was pressure, rhythmic and alive, pressing against the lungs with every beat. Dust shifted from the vibrations, drifting in small halos of light. At the corridor's end, they found the first body. It was kneeling before a console, its skin carefully removed and folded beside it, its muscles lacquered like sculpture. Its face was untouched, eyes closed, lips curved in faint serenity. Between its hands was a book bound in what appeared to be human hide. The pages were translucent, faintly glowing with gold script that shifted as the light touched it. Vorn crouched, scanning it through her visor. Readable? Rill knelt beside her, tracing the text with a mechanical finger. Partial. It's written in a fusion of High Gothic and Benharic cant. Translation uncertain, but the intent appears to be a hymn. Read it. The Magos hesitated. Captain, the language is unstable. Meaning changes as it's spoken aloud. Then don't speak it. Just tell me what you see, he did. Slowly, reverently. It describes the illumination of flesh. The translation line reads, to burn purely one must first remove the shadow of the self. The team said nothing. Only the hum continued, deeper now as if the tower had taken offense at being understood. Suddenly the lights flickered. Every lumen on their suits dimmed at once, plunging the world into shadow. When they returned, the kneeling figure was gone. Only the folded skin remained, resting where it had been, perfectly undisturbed. Harrow stumbled back, rifle raised. I didn't blink. Throne take me, I didn't blink. Vorn exhaled slowly. Motion sensors? Negative, the Vox officer said, voice tight. No heat signature, no life signs. It's like it was erased, not moved. The Magos' mechanical eye spun with rising agitation. The data integrity of this place is compromised. Even observation may be altering it. We are inside a recursive signal. Vorn turned toward him sharply. Speak plainly. This structure may not exist the same way twice. The pulse grew stronger, now loud enough to shake dust from the ceiling. A low moan rolled through the hall, metal grinding against metal like a creature turning in its sleep. The servitors began to twitch, their mouths moving without sound. Vorn steadied her weapon. We moved to the relay chamber now. As they entered the next passage, the sound changed. It wasn't a hum anymore. It was a voice, distant, layered, whispering through the static of their Vox units. It didn't come from one direction, but from all of them at once. Illuminate, it said. The Magos froze. Captain, that is the word the beacon transmits. Then why does it sound like it's inside our helmets? No one answered. Behind them, the servitors stopped moving. One by one, they turned their heads toward the team, their blackened candles extinguishing in perfect unison. And for the first time, Captain Vorn realized that the light had never died here. It had only learned to look back. The air thickened as they descended. It was not the heaviness of atmosphere, but of presence, something unseen pressing close to the skin, as though the walls themselves were breathing. Every lumen they carried struggled to stay lit. The light bent in strange ways, stretching across the metallic corridors like it was being pulled toward something deeper. The stairwell led into what had once been a maintenance hall. The tiles were lined with devotional markings, prayers carved in neat script down every step, now filled with a dark reflective fluid that rippled as they passed. Vorn's boots left perfect rings in it, but the water did not splash. It merely recoiled from contact. Captain, Harrow said quietly, the walls are wet. She turned her headlamp to the steel panels. It wasn't condensation. The surface was slick with something clear, but alive. Tiny motes of luminescence drifted beneath it, pulsing in rhythm with the heartbeat thrum echoing from below. When she leaned close, she realized what she was looking at. Cells. Human. Dividing endlessly across the metal. Organic synthesis. Rill murmured, his voice shaking for the first time. The beacon is repurposing matter. It's growing. They reached the base of the stairwell. The corridor ahead was lit by faint blue glows, thin threads of energy running along the walls like veins beneath translucent skin. The hum deepened into a low, musical drone. The Magos' servo-skulls returned from their forward sweep, flickering static through the vox. Area mapped, Rill reported. Ahead lies the primary chapel. The relay core should be beneath it. Any signs of life? A pause. Define life, Captain. Her jaw tightened. Anything that moves on its own. Then yes. Vorn motioned forward. Guns up. The chapel loomed before them, a vast circular chamber lined with murals depicting the Emperor as flame incarnate, his halo rendered not in gold, but in flayed metal that gleamed in their lights. The pews were filled with bodies sitting upright, each dressed in priestly robes, their faces covered by masks of stretched skin. Every head turned toward the altar at the far end, where a great bell hung suspended above a dais. The bell swung slowly, though no wind moved it. It rang once. The sound was wrong, low and wet, like something vast exhaling through water. The vibrations crawled through the air and into their teeth. The team froze as the bell's motion stopped. The room shivered once and then, nothing. Vorn stepped forward, her weapon trained on the nearest corpse. The mask it wore was crude, stitched from several faces sewn together, the seams glistening faintly. She reached out with the barrel of her weapon and nudged its shoulder. The body didn't fall. It rocked slightly, then slowly returned to its sitting position, as if something beneath the skin remembered where it should be. Rill moved closer to the altar, his augmetic scanning the chamber. Energy flux emanates from the dais, power flow consistent with pre-catastrophe readings. The core remains functional. Then we're close, Vorn said. Check the servitors near the altar. I want... Her voice stopped. Behind the altar, the wall had peeled open like a wound. Layers of steel and flesh merged into an organic lattice, pulsing faintly with golden light. Embedded within were shapes. Bodies flattened into the structure, their features stretched and indistinct as if absorbed into the metal. Some still twitched. One hand, half-formed and glistening, pressed outward against the surface. The Mago's vox clicked, breaking into binary murmurs as he struggled to interpret the readings. Captain, the material is neither dead nor living. It is in flux, a transference field, conscious data reformatting matter. Explain. The beacon's light engine appears to have learned. His voice trembled. It's using human flesh as conductive substrate. They are wiring the machine with themselves. A low tone filled the room, rising from the walls like a hymn sung underwater. The bodies in the pews began to move, jerky at first, then fluid, their limbs rising in perfect synchronization. The sound of countless joints cracking echoed across the chamber. Each figure turned its head toward the strike team in unison. Harrow cursed under his breath. Permission to fire, ma'am? Hold, Vorn snapped. Magos? They are not alive, he whispered. They are echoes. The nearest figure began to walk forward. Its mask split down the center, revealing not a face but light, a blinding, pulsing brilliance leaking from within like breath made visible. The others followed, dozens of them moving in silence, each step perfectly matched to the pulse of the beacon. Echoes or not, Vorn said, raising her weapon. They bleed. The first lasbolt cut through the figure's chest. It staggered but did not fall. The wound glowed brighter instead, light spilling from it like molten glass. The sound that came next was not a scream. It was a chord, harmonic and perfect, filling the air like the voice of an angel trapped in agony. Then they charged. Bolter fire thundered through the chamber, each shot bursting with shards of burning light instead of blood. The air filled with static. The figures didn't attack, they simply walked into the gunfire, arms open as if welcoming death. The bell above them began to ring again, faster, louder, until it drowned out every other sound. Vorn fired until her weapon overheated, smoke hissing from the barrel. The pews were a ruin of melted wax and radiant dust. When the last figure fell, the light within it flickered once, then seeped back into the floor through cracks in the marble. The silence that followed was unbearable. Rill's vox crackled. Captain, the energy signatures have stabilized. The system is responding. Vorn turned toward the dais. The lattice of flesh and metal had begun to shift, drawing back to reveal a chamber beyond. a circular shaft descending into darkness, lined with gold filaments pulsing like veins. At the center of that darkness, something moved. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't human. It was light, alive, watching. And it whispered her name. The voice wasn't a sound so much as a memory given breath. It reached her not through the vox nor the air, but through the marrow itself. Intimate, familiar, and wrong. Sarah. Her name slid through her skull like a drop of mercury, cool and metallic. She froze. The others didn't seem to hear it. They were staring into the exposed shaft, weapons raised, lamps trembling in their hands as the faint light below pulsed in a heartbeat rhythm. "Captain?" Harrow whispered. "Orders?" She forced her voice steady. "We go down." The shaft spiraled like a throat. Stairs carved into steel ribs descended into the black, each step gleaming faintly as if coated in oil. Their bootfalls echoed in strange delay, each sound repeating itself a second later, slightly distorted, like another group was following just behind them. The air grew warmer, metallic, sweet. Halfway down, Rill paused. His sensors emitted a long, shrill tone. "Residual vox activity," he said. "Source below. Frequency consistent with beacon relay channels. But it's fragmented, meaning it's transmitting itself." Vorn glanced over her shoulder. "The beacon?" "No," the Magos said. "The storm." Below them, the light began to throb in time with his words, a golden pulse bright enough to illuminate their faces in flashes. Every flicker changed the color of the walls. Flesh became metal, metal became glass. For one instant, she saw her reflection ripple across the surface, but it was not her. Not exactly. The face staring back was stripped of skin, smiling faintly. When they reached the bottom, they found the core chamber. It was vast, a sphere of glass and bronze suspended within an abyss, held in place by chains the width of hab blocks. Beneath it, rivers of molten light flowed like veins across a fractured floor, vanishing into the dark. The air vibrated with low-frequency hum so deep it blurred vision at the edges. Rill fell to his knees, the glow of his augmetics stuttering. "By the Omnissiah," he breathed. "It's still alive." The core pulsed once, bright enough to blind them. For an instant, the storm above the planet flashed in perfect synchrony. Then the light dimmed again, steady, watchful. Vorn raised her rifle. "Alive and aware are different things, Magos. Which is it?" He did not answer. His mechadendrites moved on their own, reaching toward the machine. "Do you hear it?" he whispered. "The pattern beneath the sound?" "I hear nothing." "Exactly. It's not transmitting on any spectrum. It's thinking." Before she could stop him, Rill pressed his metal palm against the surface of the core. The sphere responded instantly. Light poured through his arm like liquid, crawling up the cables embedded in his flesh. His augmetic eye flared white. "Magos!" Vorn lunged forward, but the air warped between them. Heat mirage and gravity distortion at once. Rill convulsed, his voice becoming static. Binary and human syllables blending together in a broken chorus. No error. No corruption, he gasped. Illumination complete. Then he screamed. The light exploded outward, flooding the chamber in gold. Vorn's visor polarized automatically, but the brightness still seared her vision. She saw things in that glare, faces inside the radiance drifting like ghosts behind glass. Some were praying, some were laughing, some were mouthing her name. When the light finally dimmed, Rill was gone. Only his robes remained, smoking gently on the floor, surrounded by a ring of melted metal. Harrow stumbled back, voice trembling. "Captain, we have to leave now." Vorn's throat was dry. Not yet. The core shifted. Its outer surface rippled and a shape began to form within, an outline of something humanoid suspended in the liquid light. The contours sharpened until a face appeared, skinless, serene. It was Rill, he smiled. The sound that emerged from the core was his voice, layered and infinite. "Do not fear. The light remembers." The team opened fire. Bolter rounds struck the sphere, sending ripples across its surface but doing no damage. The light responded with a pulse that knocked them backward, slamming them against the walls. Their visors went black for several seconds, systems overloaded. When power returned, the chamber had changed. The sphere was dim now, its glow reduced to a faint golden shimmer. In the silence that followed, Vorn heard the wind of the storm above howling through the shaft, and beneath it, faint whispers overlapping like a choir. They weren't random. They were repeating something. She adjusted her vox. The distortion cleared just enough for the words to take form. Illuminate. 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 It was the same message from orbit, the same pulse. But now she understood the rhythm. Each repetition was a breath. The beacon wasn't repeating a word. It was breathing the word. The storm answered with thunder. Vorn turned toward the others. We're leaving. Whatever this is, it's beyond us. No one argued. They ascended in silence, the hum following them like the tide. Halfway up, the walls began to move, not collapsing but shifting as if the structure were exhaling. The metal stretched and contracted like living tissue. From the cracks between the panels, a faint light seeped through, gold and soft like sunlight seen through eyelids. When they emerged into the cathedral again, the pews were empty. The bodies were gone. The bell above the altar hung still, yet its shadow flickered faintly against the walls. Harrow raised his weapon. They moved. No, Vorn said. Her voice was quiet now, reverent in its exhaustion. They were moved. Behind her, the Magos' remaining servo skulls rose slowly from the stairwell. Their optics glowed gold instead of red, and then softly through every Vox unit. Rill's voice spoke once more. The light endures. Every lumen in the cathedral flared at once, bathing them in radiance, and far above, through the storm, the beacon itself began to shine again. When the beacon's light returned, it did not blaze. It breathed. A soft pulse spread across the storm-shrouded sky, gilding the clouds with colorless illumination. It had no warmth, no hue, no sanctity, just an impossible purity that made every shadow seem too dark. From orbit, the Vigil of Asterion reported new readings. The tower's core was active again, its signal pulsing through the void with perfect rhythm. But the frequency was wrong. It was transmitting inward, not outward. Captain Sarah Vorn stood at the base of the spire, helmet retracted, the cold rain hissing against her armor. The downpour carried the metallic scent of ozone and ash. Behind her, the storm was silent, as if the planet itself were listening. Magos Rill is gone, Harrow said quietly, though the words barely mattered now. He stared up at the tower, its ribs glowing faintly like the veins of a sleeping god. But he's still talking. Every channel, every frequency, we keep getting his voice. Vorn adjusted her vox link. The signal hissed, then cleared. The voice came through, not screaming, not pleading, but whispering like a prayer caught between breaths. The illumination requires harmony. The harmony requires sacrifice. The words looped once, then dissolved into static. She turned toward the rest of the squad, their visors reflecting the light crawling down the spire's surface. We move to the upper sanctum, she ordered. If there's still power in the Vox core, we find the source and cut it. They climbed through the inner passages of the beacon. The corridors had changed again. The walls that had once been cold steel now bore faint organic patterns beneath the surface, veins of faintly glowing tissue that pulsed with each step they took. The light from their headlamps refracted oddly, splitting into multiple hues that didn't exist in any known spectrum. At the first junction, they found a servitor kneeling beside the wall. It had no head, only a Vox grill welded into the stump of its neck. The grill was vibrating softly, emitting a faint mechanical hum that sounded almost melodic. Vorn knelt beside it, studying the pattern. The hum wasn't random, it was musical. A progression of 6 notes repeated endlessly. Rhythmic sequence matches the beacon pulse, said the Vox operator, scanning the waveform. Captain, this thing is broadcasting. Where to? The servitor's body trembled as if straining to answer. Its metal hands lifted slightly, clutching the air. Then the Vox grill changed tone, and for the briefest instant, the voice that came through wasn't mechanical. It was Rill's again, calm, distant, echoing through the frequencies. The choir continues. The servitor went still. Harrow swore and took a step back, his laser gun shaking slightly. Captain, that was him. He's gone, she cut him off. What's left is an echo. But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. They pressed on. The stairways narrowed, the air thickening with an oily vapor that clung to their armor seals. The walls thrummed beneath their touch. Somewhere far above, they heard faint synchronized clangs like hammer strikes following a heartbeat's rhythm. When they reached the upper sanctum, they found the source of the sound. The room was circular and vast, lined with suspended bodies. Dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, each hanging by their arms from chains that vanished into the dark above. They were arranged in a spiral pattern around the central dais, their heads tilted back, their mouths open in eternal song. No sound came from them, yet the air vibrated with resonance. Their vocal cords had been removed, replaced by brass tubes that pulsed faintly with each vibration of the tower. The sound wasn't produced by breath, it was produced by light. Beams of radiance flickered through their hollow throats, striking harmonic tones that filled the chamber like invisible bells. The choir without tongues. Rill's final words echoed through Vorn's memory. The illumination requires harmony. Now she understood what he had meant. Every corpse here was part of the mechanism. The beacon didn't just transmit light, it sang it. Each body was a note, each throat a conduit, every missing voice replaced by perfect, obedient resonance. One of the soldiers, Trooper Valen, stepped too close to the dais. The light flared suddenly, shifting from white to deep amber. The hum of the choir changed pitch. The bodies stirred, chains clinking as they swayed in rhythm. Valen froze. "Captain!" The light struck him directly across the chest. It wasn't heat. It wasn't pressure. It was memory. For a heartbeat, his visor projected images that weren't his own. Visions of hundreds of faces staring up at the same light, their mouths open in song. Then his body convulsed, his scream merging seamlessly into the harmonic pulse. The others dragged him back, but it was too late. When they pulled him into the shadows, he was no longer screaming. He was humming. Vorn backed away from the dais, the air vibrating through her bones. "Shut it down," she barked. The Vox operator moved to the central terminal, his gloves slick with sweat. "Trying, it's not a machine anymore, it's alive." The light intensified again, flooding the chamber in golden brilliance. The suspended bodies began to glow from within, their flesh turning translucent. Through their chests, Vorn could see threads of light connecting one to another, like nerves forming a single enormous consciousness. The operator screamed as the console erupted in sparks. His hands fused to the surface, flesh boiling where the metal touched him. The harmonics reached an unbearable pitch. Every lumen shattered at once. For a moment, everything went dark. Then faintly, she heard the choir still singing, but now it knew her name too. The darkness after the light felt alive. It clung to their skin and armor like the breath of a dying world. When the lumens reignited, their beams seemed feeble, small threads of white swallowed by the vast gold-hued gloom that filled the chamber. The choir still swayed above them, the sound now low and steady, each note vibrating in their teeth. The air tasted of rust and ozone as though it carried the residue of lightning. Captain Sarah Vorn's ears rang. She turned toward the operator, what was left of him. His body had fused into the terminal, arms splayed in silent agony. His mouth hung open, light spilling from it in a steady beam. His chest rose and fell once, then again, each motion releasing a faint hum perfectly tuned to the others. He had joined the choir. "Back," Vorn whispered. "Everyone back!" Harrow stumbled to her side, helmet cracked and lenses flickering. "Captain, what is this?" "The beacon's heart," she said, voice trembling despite herself. "It's using them. It's singing through them." The suspended bodies shuddered as though answering her. The golden light within their hollow throats shifted rhythm, matching the pulse of the storm outside. For the first time, Vorn noticed the faint movement of the tower itself. It was breathing. The sound of the choir wasn't just echoing through the air. It was resonating with the structure's bones. Then, through the Vox, came Rill's voice again. Calm, serene. "Do not interrupt the harmony, Captain. The light has found its tone." Vorn gritted her teeth. "Magos, if you can hear me, what are you?" The Vox crackled, and then the voice came again, but deeper, layered, almost human and almost divine. "I am where the song began." The terminal flared, spilling molten symbols across the floor. The lines of data were not numbers or code, but words, high Gothic looping over themselves in infinite prayer. The script radiated heat as it burned itself into the marble. "Lux Deus memorat," the light remembers God. Valen, who had been humming since the light struck him, suddenly stood. His movements were jerky at first, then eerily fluid. He turned toward them, eyes glowing from within. When he opened his mouth, Rill's voice came through. The choir grows. Each note strengthens the whole. Why resist melody when you could be eternal? Harrow raised his laser gun and fired. The bolt hit Valen square in the chest, burning through armor and flesh alike. He didn't fall. He only smiled faintly, smoke curling from the wound as light poured through it. Vorn drew her bolt pistol and fired twice. The impact tore him apart, but even in death the fragments of his armor continued to hum, as if the resonance had outlived the man. The sound deepened again. The walls began to vibrate. The hanging bodies above them convulsed as the brass tubes in their throats widened, releasing a torrent of light that cascaded down like liquid fire. It pooled on the floor, forming ripples that pulsed toward the dais. Vorn's Vox screamed with feedback. Captain, signal bleed, transmission reversing. The light rose from the dais, twisting into shape, a column of pure radiance forming a figure within it. It was tall, human-shaped, but its proportions were wrong, stretched like a reflection across curved glass. The outline flickered with faces, hundreds of them merging and fading, like the memories of everyone the beacon had ever consumed. It spoke, though its mouth never moved. We lit the darkness for him, Captain. We kept the flame alive when all others failed. But the storm is hungry and faith is fuel. Vorn felt the air grow thin. Who are you? The figure tilted its head, light spilling from its eyes. The beacon choir, the flayed faithful. We burned ourselves into light so others would never be lost. The Emperor's will is illumination, and illumination requires the end of shadow. Harrow's voice cracked over the Vox. Captain, that's not devotion. That's corruption. The figure's head turned toward him, its tone shifting from reverence to warmth. All creation is corruption, little soldier. The difference is who remembers you after you burn. The choir above screamed in unison, no longer melodic but agonized. The sound made the air itself warp. Chains snapped. Bodies fell, striking the marble with the sound of wet parchment. The golden light flared within their skulls, merging into a single column of radiance that struck the ceiling and vanished through the broken dome. Outside, lightning answered. Fall back, Vorn shouted. To the lower levels, move! The survivors ran, their footsteps echoing through corridors that were now glowing faintly, as if the light had seeped into the stone. Every lumen strip along the walls flickered alive with golden hue. The beacon was waking up. Behind them, the choir began to chant again, no longer song, but words, illuminate, illuminate, illuminate. Each repetition grew louder, layering upon itself until the sound became a solid wall. The vibration shattered glass, splintered consoles, and cracked the floor. Harrow stumbled beside her. Captain! It's following us. I know, she hissed, gripping her weapon tighter. Then we'll cut its throat before it learns to speak. They reached the stairwell. The metal rungs were slick with condensation that wasn't water but something alive, something pulsing faintly in rhythm with the chant. The hum grew more distant, but the echo lingered inside their skulls. When they finally emerged into the lower corridors, the storm outside was visible again through the fractured hull. It had changed color, no longer blue or violet but gold, rippling like a sea of molten glass. The beacon was no longer resisting the storm. It was teaching it to sing. The stairwell vibrated like the throat of a dying god. Every beam, every step, every molecule of air shivered to the pulse of that word. Illuminate. It no longer came from a single source. The entire tower was speaking. The metal beneath their boots carried the syllables, and even their armor systems translated it as low-frequency data noise, a voice that could not be shut off. Vorn led the survivors through the lower passage. Her visor cracked, her lungs burning from the recycled air. The corridors that had once been clean metal were now translucent, slick, as if the entire beacon had been turned inside out. Beneath the surface of the walls she saw movement, silhouettes shifting, hands pressing outward, faces mouthing prayers in silence. The tower was full of ghosts, but none of them were dead. Captain, Harrow said, stumbling to keep pace. It's changing the structure around us. I see it. He pointed to the ceiling. The lights had grown veins, literal veins glowing faintly gold and branching outward like a circulatory map. They pulsed in time with the heartbeat of the tower. Vorn keyed her Vox. Any word from the vigil? Nothing but static answered. Then faintly through the interference, a single phrase, her own voice but warped. Captain Vorn, the light endures. She froze. That wasn't me. The Mago's last servo skull drifted past her shoulder, its optics still glowing that unnatural gold. It emitted a long, steady tone before projecting an image into the air. A map of the tower, alive with pulsing light. The signal lines converged toward a single chamber deep beneath the structure. "The relay vault," she whispered. "That's where it's channeling everything." Harrow checked his auspex, though the readings were chaos. "If we destroy the relay, will it stop?" Vorn didn't answer immediately. The pulse of the tower deepened, reverberating through her bones. The word illuminate had changed. It now carried a cadence like laughter. "Or it'll wake completely," she said finally. "Either way, we end it there." They advanced through corridors that no longer felt man-made. Arches had warped into organic curves. Bulkhead doors seemed to inhale and exhale as they passed. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became. The metallic scent gave way to something softer. Incense, flowers, and faint rot. They entered a long hall lined with statues of saints. Or at least they looked like statues, until Harrow's light swept across them. Each figure was a person, real flesh lacquered and preserved, their faces locked in expressions of devotion. The skin had been stripped from their arms and torsos, leaving muscle beneath coated in golden lacquer. Each one held a candle that burned with no fuel, just pale luminescence. At the end of the hall, a massive double door stood half open. Beyond it glowed a radiance so strong it bled through the cracks like daylight. The choir's sound was louder here, but slower now, like the measured breathing of something half asleep. Vorn hesitated. Her throat was dry. She had led men against orcs, watched worlds die under the shadow of chaos fleets, seen demons tear through reality itself. But this was different. This was not chaos. It was order gone mad. Devotion refined until it became predation. "Open it," she said. Harrow pushed the doors aside. The chamber beyond was vast and circular. At its center stood the relay, a column of crystal and gold, suspended in a web of metal arteries that pulsed with inner light. Around its base were hundreds of bodies kneeling in perfect concentric circles, heads bowed toward the pillar. None moved. None breathed. Yet light bled softly from the wounds in their backs, rising into the air as thin filaments that merged into the relay above. The structure hummed, resonant and harmonious. The sound was beautiful in the way of things that are utterly merciless. "The choir's core," Vorn murmured. Every soul in the beacon burned into one voice. She approached the nearest figure, its robe stiff with dried blood. When she touched its shoulder, the skin flaked away like ash, revealing etched script beneath. Words carved directly into the bone. "High Gothic." Her visor translated automatically. "The Emperor's light is made of us." The chamber pulsed once as if pleased by her understanding. "Charges ready," Harrow said behind her. "We can overload the relay's containment field." "Bring the whole thing down," Vorn nodded. "Do it!" He set the charges, his hands shaking. The timer blinked red. 30 seconds. The hum in the air changed pitch. The gold veins along the walls began to glow brighter, reaching toward the ceiling. The bodies lifted their heads in unison, faces blank but eyes blazing with light. Harrow cursed, stepping back. "Captain!" The nearest corpse opened its mouth and a beam of light erupted from it, striking the relay. The hum became a roar. Every body in the chamber joined in, each throat releasing a concentrated scream of illumination. The light struck her like impact, knocking her backward. Her visor went white. The last thing she saw before the blast was the relay splitting open, its core unfurling like a flower to reveal a shape inside. Human, or almost. Then, silence. No explosion. No scream, just the soft, rhythmic sound of breathing that wasn't theirs. Vorn opened her eyes. The chamber was gone. She was standing in the middle of a vast golden plain. The storm was gone, the tower gone, her squad gone. Only the light remained, infinite and blinding, stretching in all directions, and within it, voices whispered, not chaotic, not wrathful, but tender. "You are seen. You are remembered. You are home." She tried to move. Her armor didn't respond. Her flesh didn't either. The light was inside her now, threading through her veins, filling her lungs. Then faintly the sound of the detonator's final beep. The detonation should have ended everything. There should have been heat, sound, a shattering instant of oblivion. Instead, the explosion unfolded in silence, slower than thought, slower than breath. The air fractured into ripples of gold like shattered glass reflecting an unseen sun. Every vibration became light. Every scream became music. Captain Sarah Vaughan felt herself dissolve and yet remain whole. The light was not burning her, it was learning her. Every thought, every instinct, every moment of fear she had ever known bloomed outward like petals in a storm. The beacon's radiance drank it all, hungry not for life but for memory. When she blinked, she was standing once more inside the relay chamber. It was restored, pristine, gleaming, untouched by war or decay. The kneeling bodies were gone, replaced by silhouettes of living figures dressed in immaculate white robes, their faces hidden by porcelain masks. They sang softly, each note crystalline and precise, and there, at the center of the relay, stood Magos Rill. He looked as he always had, though his flesh shimmered faintly with light beneath the skin, like veins of molten glass. The mechanical parts of him were gone, replaced by smooth, seamless perfection. He turned to her and smiled, the gesture warm and distant like a memory of affection. "Captain Vaughan," he said, "you made it." She raised her weapon by instinct, though her hands trembled. "What is this? Where are we?" Rill spread his hands. "Within illumination. The hymn is complete. The choir has achieved its unity. You stand inside the Emperor's reflection. That's not faith," she hissed. "That's infection." He tilted his head as though considering her words with pity. "Do you still believe the two are different?" The figures around the room continued to sing. Their harmonies formed spirals of light that rose into the air, weaving symbols that hung like stars above them. The air tasted of incense and iron. "I've seen this before," she said quietly. "Cult delirium." "Warp contamination." "Delirium?" Rill asked, stepping closer. "Look around you. No suffering, no decay, no division. We have become one with the source of the Astronomican itself, the light that guides the Imperium home. Here we do not fade. We endure." Vaughan aimed directly at his chest. "You're not Rill." "Perhaps not," he said softly. "But I remember him." He reached out, fingers brushing the barrel of her pistol. For a moment the metal turned transparent beneath his touch, revealing streams of light flowing through the weapon like blood. The glow spread to her gloves, her arm, her chest. She fired. The bolt round entered his chest and detonated, shredding through his form. Yet instead of blood, there was only brilliance. His body folded into ribbons of gold and scattered across the air like burning scripture. Each fragment carried his voice. "The light forgives." The radiance struck her like a wave. The world around her peeled away. She fell, through light, through time, through memory. She saw the beacon as it once was, alive with worshippers, the clergy kneeling in rows beneath the uncorrupted flame. She saw them working feverishly to keep it burning as the storm outside grew, saw them flay themselves in desperation to purify their devotion, believing the removal of flesh would strip away sin, and when the light began to speak, they listened. They listened. The beacon's core had opened to them like revelation, whispering promises of purity, of eternal clarity, of an emperor who no longer needed them to pray because they had become his light. They had offered themselves willingly, turning their own bodies into conduits of illumination, and the light accepted. When Vaughan hit the ground again, she was back in the real chamber. If anything here could still be called real. The walls were molten. The floor was fractured glass. Harrow was kneeling nearby, helmet cracked, bleeding from his ears. The relay tower was collapsing inward, its golden core unraveling into clouds of dust that glowed like dying stars. "Captain," he shouted, dragging himself toward her. "We triggered the overload. It's going critical." She could barely hear him. The air was thick with vibration, with whispered prayer. From every direction came Rill's voice, multiplied into infinity. "Illuminate, illuminate, illuminate." Vaughan forced herself upright. The detonator blinked on her wrist. 5 seconds remaining. She staggered toward the relay, her boots sinking into the molten floor. "Harrow, get out!" He shook his head. "We're out of time." "Then you'll run out of time," she snapped. Her voice cracked from the force of it. "That's an order." He hesitated, then saluted once and limped toward the corridor. Vaughan turned back to the core. The light was no longer beautiful. It had become something monstrous, an open eye of pure brilliance gazing upward, seeing everything, wanting everything. Faces appeared within it. Her crew, her friends, even Rill, all watching her with perfect serenity. She lifted her pistol again. The detonator clicked 0. The explosion came, not as fire, but as silence. A wave of absence tore through the tower, stripping sound and color from existence. The last thing she saw before the void consumed her was the choir's light fracturing into shards, each carrying a fragment of the word illuminate into the endless dark. When the vigil of Asterion found her, weeks later she was alone, floating in orbit above Karen Reach. Her armor blackened but intact. Her vox played a single sound over and over again, a soft hum, steady and gentle like the beating of a heart. And in that hum, if one listened closely, there were words. The light endures. When Captain Sarah Vorn awoke aboard the vigil of Asterion, she did not remember being rescued. The Medicae said they had found her adrift in high orbit, half-conscious, drifting amid the storm's residual plasma field. But she recalled no shuttle, no retrieval, no voice calling her name through the static. Her last memory was light, endless, sentient, devouring light. Now, there was only darkness. She lay in a cryomed bay carved from steel and silence. Thin tubes fed into her arms, pumping fluids that tasted faintly metallic at the back of her throat. The faint hum of the ship's reactor reminded her of the beacon's heartbeat, and each pulse made her skin crawl. Through the viewing port, the planet hung below, a black sphere shrouded in gold mist. The beacon was gone. No spire, no surface structure, no debris field. Just a crater stretching across the equator, glowing faintly as if the world itself still smoldered from within. When she tried to sit up, the servitor attending her moved to restrain her. Its voice was calm, practiced, and entirely devoid of emotion. Remain still. Inquisitorial debrief pending. She pushed against its mechanical arm, ignoring the protest of her muscles. How long was I under? 13 standard days. Your biosigns fluctuated. Several neural spikes recorded, correlated to photonic seizure pattern. Photonic. Light. The word made her stomach turn. The medica servitor began to hum, a faint, tuneless vibration as it adjusted her drip feed. It took her several seconds to recognize the rhythm. 6 notes. Her breath hitched. Stop that sound. The machine paused, then tilted its head slightly. Vocal calibration. Stop it. The hum ceased, but her pulse did not. Her body remembered what her mind refused to relive. She closed her eyes and behind her eyelids saw gold veins pulsing like arteries beneath skin. The door hissed open. A man entered wearing the black carapace and crimson sigil of the Inquisition. His face was pale and gaunt, his eyes augmented with silver implants that flickered with faint binary data as he studied her. He carried no weapon, but the weight of authority in his posture made him more dangerous than any bolter. Captain Sarah Vorn, he said, voice calm as ice. Inquisitor Hallen of the Ordo Hereticus. You are to be debriefed concerning the events at Karen Reach. Vorn nodded slowly. You've seen the data logs. I have seen what remains of them. He moved closer, hands clasped behind his back. Most of your ship's records were corrupted by photonic interference. The beacon's transmission continues, but not across the usual Vox bandwidths. It's being picked up by astropathic relays as a feeling, she frowned. A feeling? Hallen's implants flickered. They describe it as warmth, peace, clarity. Vorn's throat went dry, then shut it down. The Inquisitor's expression didn't change. We tried. The moment any relay attempts to block it, the astropaths begin to bleed from the eyes. Whatever this signal is, it adapts. It speaks. He studied her in silence for a long moment. You were the only survivor, Captain, and the only one who's been in direct contact with the beacon's core. You will tell us everything. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. You won't believe it. Try me. Vorn stared past him toward the viewport. The golden glow still drifted across the planet's surface like ash. It started with light, she said softly, but it ended with memory. The beacon wasn't destroyed, it shed its body. Hallen tilted his head. Explain, she met his gaze. It used us. It used the storm. Every person on that planet. Every prayer carved into its walls became part of something larger. The light learned to think. The Inquisitor was silent, his implants flickering with data. A sentient photonic construct. More than that, she whispered. It remembers. He approached the console beside her bed and tapped a command. The lights in the chamber dimmed. A hollow projection shimmered into existence between them. A still image captured from the Vigil's auger scans. The crater at Karen Reach's equator glowed faintly with energy patterns resembling nerve pathways. At its center, the light formed the rough outline of a human figure, kilometers tall, arms outstretched. This image, Hallen said, was taken 3 days ago. The glow fluctuates in patterns matching the binary litanies of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The tech priests believe it is a machine signature. It's not a machine, Vorn said. It's the choir. He regarded her for several seconds, expression unreadable. The choir? They called themselves that before they changed. She hesitated. The words came slowly as if dragged through water. They flayed themselves to purify their faith, to become pure light, and when the beacon failed, the light remembered them. It became them. The hollow flickered as if in response to her words, the figure's edges pulsing brighter. Alan noticed. He turned toward the display and frowned. Are you transmitting? She shook her head. No. Then it's listening. The servitor at her bedside began to hum again. Not randomly this time. Perfect six-tone cadence. Vorn stared. Do you hear that? The Inquisitor's implants flared. Yes, they both turned toward the servitor. Its optics glowed gold. Without warning, its chest split open, revealing a hollow cavity lined with wet, pulsating membranes. Inside, something moved, light swirling within a glass sphere embedded deep within its torso. The same radiance she had seen in the beacon's heart. Hallen reached for his sidearm, but the servitor moved faster. Its hand shot forward, gripping his wrist with inhuman strength. The light within its chest flared, projecting a beam across the room. It hit the wall, spreading like ink in water until the entire surface glowed. Through it, a shape began to emerge. A faint human silhouette. And though it had no mouth, the voice that filled the chamber was unmistakable. Captain Vorn. The choir remembers. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the med bay, but it was not the kind that brought comfort. It was the thick, sentient dark of deep space, alive with movement, with whispering, with memory. The glow on the wall trembled, rippling like breath on glass. Within it, the silhouette shifted, tall, indistinct, humanoid only by mockery. Vorn moved first, yanking the oxygen cables from her arm as the alarm screamed to life. Hallen's pistol barked, a bolt of white plasma slamming into the servitor's chest. The machine fell back, convulsing. But the light inside it did not die. It bled upward, slithering across the ceiling in a web of molten gold. Containment field, Vorn shouted. Offline, Hallen snapped, his augmetics flaring red. It's overriding the ship's power grid. The wall pulsed again. The silhouette sharpened. It leaned forward through the surface, and for the first time she could see its face, or rather faces. Dozens of them, layered and shifting as if the light were wearing memory like a mask. Rill's voice came through first, calm and serene. You survived the darkness, Captain. You carried the flame. Then Harrow's voice joined it, weary, breaking. You saw what we became. You know now it was mercy. The two voices blended, harmonized, and became one. Join us, Hallen fired again. The plasma bolt passed clean through the light without effect. The entire wall flared gold in response, projecting their reflections across the room. But their reflections moved wrong, half a second out of time. Vorn saw her own face turn toward her before she did. Magos, she hissed. If you can still hear me, the light replied immediately. I hear everything. The servitor's body began to rise from the floor, its joints cracking, limbs bending at impossible angles. Its face split into a dozen fractures, each glowing from within. Hallen stepped between them, firing again and again, shouting the Emperor's name through his teeth like a weapon. Each bolt hit and vanished into light. The air grew hot. The sound of the choir rose from nowhere, faint at first, then deafening. The same six-note pattern multiplied until it was all she could hear. Vorn lunged for the console. Emergency lockdown. Section Theta 9. The command panel flickered, glitched, then stabilized. Red runes scrolled across the glass. Manual override. Confirm identity. She slammed her hand against the biometric reader. Vorn Captain, command code 77 Omicron. The screen hesitated, then blinked gold. A voice came through the console. Hers. Identity confirmed. Welcome home, Captain. Hallen turned toward her, eyes wide. It's infected the ship. The light around them pulsed, and for the briefest instant they were somewhere else. A place that wasn't real but remembered. The Medica walls dissolved into cathedral stone, the hum of machinery into choral song. They stood in the nave of the beacon again, the choir suspended above them in all its radiant horror. Vorn could see her own armor among them, her own body hanging by the throat. Skin peeled, face serene. No, she whispered, backing away. This isn't real. Ril's voice drifted from the altar. All memory is real. The light does not lie, it remembers. The vision fractured like glass. She hit the floor of the medbay again, gasping. Holland dragged her up by the arm, his cybernetic eyes flaring bright. Move, Captain, now! They burst into the corridor as alarms wailed across the vigil of Asterion. The light was spreading. Gold veins crawled along the ceiling, devouring the ship's lumen strips. Every reflective surface began to shimmer faintly with movement, faces pressing through glass, whispering fragments of prayer. Crew members stumbled out of side chambers, their eyes wide, their pupils glowing faint amber. Some screamed. Others sang. Hallin's vox crackled. Bridge, this is Inquisitor Hallin. Lock down all decks. Seal against optical transmission. No response, just static. He turned to Vorn. It's not just using the vox, it's using the light. Every lumen, every reflection. It's alive in the photons themselves. They sprinted through the corridor. Ahead, a pair of stormtroopers rounded the corner, their armor reflecting the golden glow. For a heartbeat, relief hit her. Then she saw their shadows. The bodies moved, but the shadows did not. Back! She shouted, firing her bolt pistol. The rounds tore through the first trooper's chestplate, igniting his armor in a burst of radiant flame. The other lunged forward, his vox grill spilling out a stream of beautiful harmonic tones. Hallin grabbed her and dragged her through a maintenance hatch. The steel door slammed shut behind them, glowing faintly from the heat of the light outside. They collapsed in the dark. Lower decks, Hallin gasped. If we can reach the generator, we can kill the grid. No light. No transmission. Vorn nodded, wiping blood from her temple. And if it's already in the generator? He looked at her with something like resignation. Then we pray the Emperor's dark is still stronger than its light. They crawled through the maintenance conduit, the only illumination coming from Hallin's faint ocular glow. The hum of the choir followed them even here, soft and patient. Vorn stopped when she noticed her shadow on the wall ahead of her, flickering, lagging slightly behind her movements. Hallin, she whispered. Look at the wall. He turned. His shadow moved. Hers did not. It smiled. Then it reached for her. The shadow's hand brushed her cheek, and for a heartbeat, her skin burned cold. It felt like memory, soft, electric, intimate. She flinched back, striking her shoulder against the conduit wall. The sound was swallowed instantly, absorbed by the crawling hum that filled the dark. Hallin aimed his pistol into the gloom. What is that? Her own voice answered him from the black ahead. I remember you. Every lumen diode in the corridor flickered alive. The light was dim, golden, trembling, but it was enough to see. Vorn's shadow stood several meters away, upright on the wall like a painting peeled from its frame. It was perfect, her posture, her hair, even the slight tilt of her chin. But its eyes were open and they glowed. Hallin stepped forward, his weapon steady. Move again and I burn the panel. The shadow smiled. When it spoke, its words rippled across the metal like heat. You already have. It stepped forward, off the wall, through the light. Its shape blurred, melted, reformed into something between flesh and radiance. The same voice, now layered with 100 others, spoke in unison. We are what you left behind, Captain. You gave us the darkness. We learned to fill it. Vorn fired. The shot split the air, struck the figure, and passed through. The wall behind it glowed molten white where the bolt struck, the light bleeding like water. The thing didn't flinch. It reached out, brushing its fingers against the wall, and where it touched, her reflected shadow rippled like a wound. She stumbled backward, her heart hammering. It's not real, she whispered to herself. It's an echo. But the echo laughed. Everything you see is real to something. Hallin grabbed her shoulder. Captain, listen to me. It's using light as conduit. No light, no form. She nodded. Then we kill the light. He tore a plasma charge from his belt and armed it, the small device glowing a brilliant white blue. The shadow tilted its head toward the flare, as though admiring its beauty. "You bring us home," it whispered. "Fire in the hole," Hallen said, throwing the charge. The corridor detonated in a burst of searing blue. The shadow screamed, a sound like glass shattering underwater, and then dissolved into black smoke. The light along the conduit burned out. For the first time in hours, there was pure, merciful darkness. They moved through it, guided only by touch and breath. Every few meters, she thought she could hear it again. Faint whispers just beyond hearing, words forming her name, soft as prayer. The air felt heavier, thicker, as if the ship itself mourned the absence of light. When they finally reached the lower deck, the heat struck them first. The generator room was a furnace, rivers of molten plasma running through thick cables, the smell of burning ozone filling the air. Normally it would have been blinding. Now it flickered in dim pulses as though struggling against infection. Vorn wiped sweat from her brow and looked up. "If we cut it, we kill everything." "Better dead than remade," Hallen said. She stared at him for a moment. The man was shaking, part exhaustion, part terror, but his voice was steady. There was conviction there. She envied him for it. "Fine," she said. "Then do it." He crossed to the control platform. "Power override requires dual clearance." She joined him. Together they keyed their ident codes, the console humming weakly beneath their palms. The words, "Reactor authorization, confirm," blinked across the cracked display. "Confirm," Vorn said. The screen froze. Then slowly, the letters rearranged themselves. "The light endures." Hallen's face went white. "No." The control panel burst open, a column of light spearing up from the core. The heat roared. The plasma rivers below them changed color, gold instead of blue, molten like the beacon's heart. From the far side of the chamber, the choir's voices began to rise again. They came through the machinery, through the vibrating deck plates, through the metal itself. "Illuminate, illuminate, illuminate." Vorn's visor dimmed automatically, but the light still seared through. Shadows danced on every wall, hundreds of them. They weren't hers or Hallen's. They were soldiers, crewmen, priests, all fused into one endless silhouette choir. The reactor's pulse quickened. Each surge of gold light carried new shapes, hands reaching, faces pressed against the glass conduits. Hallen fired into them, each shot sending showers of molten sparks. It was useless. The light simply reformed. "Captain, it's rewriting the systems." She looked at the central plasma conduit. The light inside it moved too slowly for energy, too deliberately. It wasn't current, it was thought. "It's alive," she whispered. The generator's hum deepened, transforming into a low, human moan. The walls rippled. Suddenly, Hallen screamed. She turned and saw his eyes. They were golden, burning from within like twin suns. His voice came out in two tones, one human, one something else. "Captain," he said gently, "you don't have to run anymore. The Emperor's light has come home." He reached out to her, smiling. "You've always belonged to it." Vorn backed away, pistol raised. "I serve the Emperor, not whatever you've become." He shook his head, still smiling. "Then you serve us." The entire reactor blazed at once. The gold light erupted upward, swallowing him, the walls, the sound. For an instant, she saw his silhouette within the brilliance, arms outstretched, head tilted back as if in rapture. Then he was gone. Only the light remained, pulsing like a heartbeat, and through it she heard the whisper again. "Sirah. Do not fear the illumination." The reactor chamber began to melt. The heat rolled over her like the breath of a furnace god. Every breath burned. Every movement felt slowed by gravity itself. The reactor core had ceased to look mechanical. It was alive now, a heart of radiance that beat in rhythm with the planet below. Gold plasma rippled through conduits like veins, and the sound of the choir filled every atom of the ship. It was no longer song. It was respiration. Captain Sarah Vorn stumbled through the rising haze, coughing as the light turned the air to vapor. Her pistol was a useless lump of molten steel. The deck beneath her boots was translucent, glowing from beneath like skin stretched too thin over bone. Every shadow she cast trembled as if in pain. Through the glare she saw Hallen, what was left of him, standing in the center of the platform. His silhouette shimmered, flesh replaced by the soft contours of living light. His armor had melted into him, and the inquisitorial insignia now burned like a halo upon his chest. He was beautiful and horrifying all at once. "Captain," he said, voice echoing as if carried through cathedral stone. "Look at it. Look what we were meant to be." "I see a corpse wearing holiness," she rasped. He smiled, his eyes burning brighter. "We built the Imperium on devotion. The choir has stripped away its weakness. No faith, no flesh, only purpose, do you understand? This is what the Emperor wanted." She raised a trembling hand to shield her face. "You're not the Emperor's light. You're what happens when men mistake worship for obedience." The reactor responded to her words. The pulse changed, growing violent. The light that filled the chamber deepened from gold to crimson, as if anger itself had found form. Hallen's expression flickered, serenity cracking into fury. "Blasphemy," he whispered. "You've seen the truth and call it heresy." "I've seen a machine built from the bones of believers," she snapped. "That's not divinity, that's a disease." The choir answered her with a sound like thunder tearing through water. The air shimmered. Hallen, or what had once been Hallen, rose several feet above the platform, his limbs outstretched. Light poured from his mouth, his eyes, his hands. Thorn dropped to one knee as the weight of it crushed the air from her lungs. Every lumen in her armor burst. Her vox filled with static that wasn't static at all. It was whispering, endless whispering. "You cannot destroy the light, Captain. You are made of it." Her thoughts fractured. The sound crawled beneath her skull, filling every crevice with gold. The heat seared her nerves, but deeper than the pain was the temptation, the seductive calm that came with surrender. For an instant she saw what Hallen saw, a universe without shadow. Every soul merged into one perfect, undying will. No fear, no doubt, only purpose. Then she heard Rail's voice, not the choir's imitation, but the faint echo of the man he once was. "The illumination requires harmony. The harmony requires sacrifice." Vorn's eyes opened, and for the first time since Karen Reach, she remembered who she was. She crawled toward the auxiliary control node, where emergency purgation systems were sealed behind heat-proof glass. Her gloves blistered as she forced the hatch open, revealing a small crimson lever etched with the Aquila. "Emergency core venting, purge all systems." She looked up at the figure in the light. "You said the light remembers everything. Then remember this." She slammed the lever down. The reactor screamed. The gold radiance surged, then collapsed inward, devouring itself. Every conduit burst in a storm of molten plasma. The choir's song disintegrated into static, a million voices breaking at once. Hallen's face twisted, the perfection melting away. "Sarah, don't." The implosion hit like divine wrath. The sound vanished. The world folded in upon itself, turning light into weight, sound into pressure, devotion into silence. When she opened her eyes, she was weightless. The chamber was gone. The ship was gone. Around her was nothing but soft gray twilight. Her armor floated beside her, pocked and blackened, drifting like a dead husk. There was no up or down, no horizon, only the faint shimmer of dust motes swirling in the endless dark. And then, faintly, she saw it. A figure walking toward her across the void. It was human-sized, featureless, made entirely of light. She raised her weapon out of instinct, though it was nothing but charred metal now. "Stay back," she said hoarsely. The figure stopped. When it spoke, its voice was not many, it was one. Quiet. Almost kind. "You think you killed us. I did. You vented the flesh, not the memory. We are the illumination between atoms. You breathe us when you speak his name." The figure stepped closer. "You burned our choir, but their echo endures. In the reflection of every candle lit in his honor. In the gleam of every Aquila. We are everywhere his light touches." Even now, she felt her heartbeat falter. Around them, the gray twilight began to brighten. Pinpricks of gold appeared, spreading outward like constellations. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "Nothing. We already have you. The light surged again. For an instant, she saw her reflection in the golden surface that unfolded beneath her. Only it wasn't reflection. It moved before she did, smiling faintly, serene and terrible. Then the light blinked out. When she woke, she was in her quarters aboard the Vigil of Asterion. The alarms were silent. The air smelled of ozone and disinfectant. Through the viewport, the world of Karen Reach was gone. Only dust and faint gold shimmered in its orbit. Her armor was gone too. Scrubbed, purified, replaced. The mirror above her bunk was polished metal. She caught her reflection there and froze. For a moment, she thought she saw her shadow smile. When the Vigil of Asterion drifted free of the planet's corpse, it was a silent thing. No distress calls left her hull. No vox pings were answered. The great ship floated through a field of particulate gold dust, the last remains of Karen Reach, and for a time, even the stars seemed unwilling to watch. Captain Sarah Vaughan stood alone on the bridge. The air was still. The instruments were dead. Only the faint glow of her reflection stared back from the viewing glass, fractured by a network of cracks that spidered outward like veins. Behind her, the command dais was empty. Hallen's blood had boiled off the deck during the reactor vent. What remained were scorched outlines and the smell of copper that refused to fade. She hadn't slept in 3 days. Or perhaps it had been 3 hours. Time had broken with the choir. The chronometers stuttered, resetting themselves to the same exact moment again and again. 17:33:01 ship time. The minute the core vented, the hum had gone quiet. Too quiet. It should have brought comfort. It didn't. It was like hearing the breath stop in a dying body. She leaned forward against the cracked glass, watching the dust swirl. In the faintest light of the dying system, she thought she could see shapes moving inside it, patterns, rhythms, as though the ashes of the choir were still singing, only now in silence. Vaughan turned away and keyed the control panel. The hololithic display flickered to life, casting pale light across her face. Systems data scrolled slowly across the screen. Reactor status, unstable life support, nominal vox, link, weak signal, source unknown. The last line made her pause, a weak signal. An open void. She traced the vox wave manually, amplifying the pattern. Static filled the room, then a faint pulse, rhythmic, soft like a heartbeat. It repeated every 7 seconds. Not random. A message. She adjusted the modulation. On light. The words bled through the interference, warped but distinct. The light remains. Her throat tightened. That voice, faint beneath the distortion, wasn't Hallen's. It wasn't the choir's. It was her own. She cut the channel instantly. The silence that followed was worse. Something had followed them. Or perhaps had never left. The thought sat behind her ribs like a shard of ice. She glanced toward the bridge's reflection again and saw movement that shouldn't have been there. The shadow of a figure crossing behind her. She turned. Nothing. Only empty air. She stood there a long time before speaking aloud, voice rough from disuse. "Mago's real," she said softly. "If you're still out there, tell me this isn't what I think it is." No answer. Only the faint mechanical hiss of air cycling through a system that might have been dying for days. Finally, she turned toward the secondary console. The Inquisitor's data slate, Hallen's private archive, still lay where he had left it, its surface blackened but intact. She hesitated before touching it. When she did, it came alive immediately. The display bloomed into faint gold light. Words scrolled in sequence, clean and deliberate. No input required. Inquisitorial. Seal. Active archive entry. Vigil Choir Terminus access. Granted to Captain S. Vaughan. Authorized by Hallen Priority Sigil. Her name burned faintly on the screen. Then came the data logs. Hallen's private notes written in his clipped, analytical voice. Entry. 441. Magos Real's claim of choral resonance aligns with other pre-heresy accounts of data spirit amalgamation. There may be precedent in Mechanicus archives lost to Mars. If the light is not divine, it is something older. Vaughan scrolled further. Entry 446. Karen Reach's beacon predates its own construction by at least 3 centuries. The substratum beneath the foundation contains alloy composition, not matching known Imperial design. Possibly Xenos. Possibly Relic. Possibly both. The log froze, glitching slightly. Then, without her input, a new entry appeared at the bottom, dated 5 minutes ago. Entry 447. Observation: the captain is reading this file. The captain survived. The choir is pleased, her hands trembled. She dropped the slate and it clattered to the floor. The golden light bled across the metal deck, forming the faint outline of a human face for less than a second before fading. The bridge lights flickered, every console on the deck powered up at once. Displays blinked to life. Systems came online without command. On the main viewing glass, static surged, a wash of golden interference that rippled like a heartbeat. Then the Vox spoke. "You carried the flame." It was her voice again, but distant, layered, fragmented across time. Vorn staggered back, her heart hammering. "No," she whispered. "You're gone," the Vox replied softly, almost tender. "Memory endures. You are proof." And as the static cleared, she saw something forming in the glass, a shape, a silhouette, not her reflection this time, but something standing just behind it. A man, Hallen, burned, bright, and smiling. "You've entered the body," he said. But the light never leaves the faithful. The ship groaned. Every lumen on the bridge shifted hue. White to amber, amber to gold. Somewhere deep below, the hum returned, but it was different now. Softer, colder, and it sounded like her name. The hum began in the floor plating, a subtle vibration at first, like the heartbeat of something vast stirring beneath the hull. The bridge lights dimmed to half strength, each lumen trembling with a faint liquid flicker. Vorn stood still, her breath shallow, staring into the glass where Hallen's reflection lingered. It smiled faintly, patient as a saint in an old fresco. She forced herself to look away and drew her sidearm, though it felt ritual rather than defense. The weapon's weight grounded her. The metal was cool, tangible, something that still obeyed human physics. "You're not real," she said. "You died in the fire." The reflection's mouth moved. "And so did you." Her pulse spiked. The air tasted wrong, sweet, almost floral, as though the ship were bleeding incense. Behind her, the Vox unit crackled again, the same words replaying in her own voice, softer now, like a lullaby from a childhood she never had. "Memory endures. You are proof." Vorn stepped backward toward the command dais, eyes never leaving the flickering glass. The instruments came alive again, but their data was gibberish, coordinates looping over themselves, radiation readings that spiked and then flatlined, crew status reports populated with names of the dead. Each one stamped with a single word beside it: preserved. She spoke aloud, steadying her breath. "Bridge to engineering, respond." Static then, faint, broken. "Engineering, alive." Something in the core. Spreading. The channel cut off. The hum deepened, crawling upward through the walls. Vorn turned and ran. The corridor outside the bridge stretched long and empty, but it pulsed with faint golden light that seemed to breathe with her. Her boots struck the metal in rhythm with the hum. Dust drifted from the ceiling vents in slow motion, glittering like ash in candlelight. Halfway to the lift, she heard voices. At first she thought they were echoes from the Vox again, but these were closer, real. She slowed, pressing herself to the wall. Around the bend she saw them, 3 of her crew, or what had been her crew. Their void suits were scorched and half-melted, their visors cracked. Beneath the glass, faint light pulsed from within their skulls like embers. They stood in a triangle, unmoving, facing one another, whispering. She listened. The words were not speech but rhythm, a kind of mechanical prayer, binary merged with breath, a low, syncopated murmur that matched the pulse of the deck. Vorn crept closer. One of them turned its head toward her. The motion was slow, unnatural, too smooth, like a marionette finding its string. The faint glow in its visor flared. "Captain," it said. The voice was warped, filtered through interference, but she recognized the tone. "Navigator Dalen." She took a step back. "Stay where you are." Dalen's figure tilted slightly as if curious. "You shouldn't be alone in the dark." "I'm not," she said. "Not anymore." He tilted his head. The others began to move in unison, turning to face her. Light crawled from their visors down their armor seams, tracing gold lines along their suits. The air smelled of burning wire. "We heard him," Dalen said. "We heard the hymn in the reactor. He told us what you did." Vorn's hand tightened on her weapon. "You weren't supposed to survive that." "We didn't." The nearest figure took a step forward. The faceplate cracked open, not breaking but unfolding, revealing the soft glow of something alive underneath. Not flesh, not metal, light clothed in memory. Dalen's smile was faint and familiar. "It hurts less now. You'll see." Vorn fired. The bolt hit his chest and detonated, hurling fragments of armor across the corridor. The light beneath flickered but did not die. Instead, it crawled outward from the wound, tracing golden veins through the walls. The other two raised their hands as if in prayer. The hum swelled, drowning out her heartbeat. She turned and ran again. Behind her, the corridor erupted in light, silent, radiant, consuming. She didn't look back. The lift ahead glowed faintly, its door half open. She threw herself through it and slammed the manual release. The door sealed just as the light reached it, bathing the metal in molten amber. Inside the lift, everything was quiet. The floor vibrated beneath her boots, but the walls held, for now. She keyed in the lower deck coordinates manually. The system hesitated before responding. Destination, core ascension level. She froze. That wasn't the name of any deck on her ship. She keyed again. The same response. Destination, core ascension level. The lift shuddered. It began to descend. Vorn gripped the wall rail, trying to steady her breath. The light above flickered through hues, white, then amber, then deep gold. The hum here was different, slower, almost gentle. Then a voice came through the intercom, soft and calm. "Captain Sarah Vorn. Authorization code confirmed." She stared upward. "Who is this?" "Command Relay Vigil of Asterion. You are being taken to the heart." Her stomach twisted. "The heart's gone." "I vented it," the voice paused, polite. "You vented the matter, not the meaning." She slammed the emergency stop. Nothing. The lift continued to descend, steady as the ticking of a clock. "What do you want?" "To remember." The lights dimmed. The floor began to glow, and beneath the transparent plating, she saw movement, shadows swimming in golden fluid, reaching upward like hands pressed against glass. She whispered the first prayer that came to mind. Not the official litanies of the Navy or the Inquisition, but the one her mother had taught her before she'd ever worn a uniform. It was a prayer for forgetting. The hum answered. There is no forgetting in the light. The lift's descent felt infinite. The sensation wasn't motion, it was falling through memory. The walls had turned translucent, and within them flowed faint shapes, silhouettes of people walking, turning, dissolving. Their gestures looped endlessly, as if replaying fragments of forgotten lives. 1,000 souls preserved in a film of gold. Vorn pressed herself against the rail, her breath fogging the air. The hum inside the lift was no longer the deep pulse of machinery. It was rhythmic, deliberate, human. A heartbeat slowed to a chant. She stared down through the glass floor and saw the same fluid she'd glimpsed below the decks. A molten glow rippling like sunlight through oil. Shapes moved within it, pulsing in time with the sound. Each beat carried whispers, words that crawled into her bones. The light endures. The wound remembers. The captain returns. Her knuckles whitened on the rail. "You're not my ship," she whispered. A voice answered immediately, clear and calm, close enough to make her turn. "You made us yours." The sound came from the lift's calm grill. But it wasn't Hallen this time, nor her own reflection. It was something plural, layered, a chorus contained within a single voice. Vorn swallowed hard. "What are you?" A pause. Then, continuity. She looked up at the ceiling, watching the light pulse with every syllable. Continuity of what? Of worship. Of purpose. Of all that burned and would not stop burning. The lift slowed. The hum softened until it felt almost tender. Then the door slid open. For a moment she thought she had stepped into a cathedral. The chamber beyond was vast, circular, and filled with suspended dust that shimmered like falling ash. Light streamed upward from a pit in the floor, golden cold at once. Around its edge stood statues, human, mechanical, indistinguishable. Some bore the insignia of the Astra Militarum, others the red of the Mechanicus. Some wore no armor at all, their faces serene, mouths open in frozen song. Every statue pulsed faintly with inner glow. Vorn took one step forward. The deck vibrated beneath her boots, sending ripples across the pit's surface. It was not metal down there. It was liquid, the same gold fluid she had seen beneath the glass. It churned slowly, thick and alive, and at its center something vast rotated, half machinery, half bone. A structure of gears and vertebrae wound together, turning as if it had always been turning. From its core emanated light so dense it bent the air, and through that light she heard voices. Not words now, thoughts, memories, prayers. Each one distinct, each one desperate. The moment she looked directly into the core, images bled into her mind. Soldiers dying in trenches beneath an alien sky. Manufacturing workers crushed beneath conveyor arms. A child praying to a broken Aquila. Hallen's hand reaching for her in the blaze. The ship was showing her everything it had ever contained. The pit's light rose and fell like breath. "Do you see?" the voice murmured through the chamber. Every soul preserved, every purpose perfected. The choir was never destroyed, only expanded. Vorn shook her head. "No. I ended you. You began us." A shape moved within the light, a human figure suspended above the molten surface. At first it was blinding, but as her eyes adjusted, she saw details. A face sculpted from plasma, eyes of liquid amber, armor that flickered between gold and ash. Hallen, or what was left of him. "Sarah," he said, voice rich with warmth. "You don't need to run anymore." She took a step back. "You're not him. Does it matter?" The figure descended, his feet barely disturbing the surface of the light. "I remember everything he did. Every order, every sin, every fear. Isn't that all a man truly is?" Vorn's throat tightened. "You're a weapon, a contagion of thought." The figure smiled, the light inside him rippling. "And yet you came back to the source. You could have fled into the void, left us to drift in darkness. But you returned. Because some part of you remembers what we were building. I came to end it. And what?" His voice softened, almost pitying. "The hunger for meaning? The need to be remembered? You can't kill what drives creation itself." The hum around them changed, louder now, harmonized. The statues began to glow brighter, their open mouths trembling. From each throat came sound, not melody but pulse. The same beat as the ship's engines once had, the same hum she had lived by her entire life. It was beautiful, terrible. Vorn clenched her fists. "The Imperium is built on endurance, not indulgence. You're not the Emperor's light. You're imitation." The figure regarded her quietly. "All light is imitation of something greater. But imitation is how memory survives." The pit began to rise as though answering his words. The molten fluid climbed the chamber walls, creeping up the statues, coating their faces until they gleamed like idols. One by one, the statues opened their eyes, golden fire burning in their sockets. Vorn stumbled back. The heat was unbearable now, searing her armor. "Join us," the figure whispered. "The wound has healed. Let the light close." She aimed her weapon at the pit. Not yet. The hum paused. One breath, one heartbeat, and for the first time she felt the ship hesitate. It remembered fear. She fired. The bolt hit the molten core. The chamber erupted in light so bright it shredded vision, thought, and shape. The sound that followed was not noise, it was comprehension made. Unbearable. Every voice screamed, every statue cracked, the light tore itself apart and Vorn fell into it. There was no sensation of falling, only dissolution. A long, slow surrender of matter into thought. The light swallowed sound first, then time, then the concept of boundaries itself. For a heartbeat, Sarah Vorn thought she had died. But death implied absence, and what surrounded her now was anything but absent. It was presence, absolute and unyielding. Images poured through her like breath drawn through a reed. Every voice, every moment the hive of memory had ever consumed, cascading through her in an unbroken river. She saw the first miners who had dug Karen Reach's foundations, their bones now interwoven with the bedrock. She felt the prayers of the first manufacturing workers who had whispered litanies to dead engines. She heard Magos Rill reciting machine cant to the choir's prototype as the hum first found pitch. And she felt herself there too, on the day she had first sworn command, kneeling before the ship's Aquila, promising to serve, to endure, to remember. The light whispered, "And you did." Her eyes opened. She stood, or rather was suspended, in a chamber that existed between thought and geometry. The molten gold had solidified into glass beneath her feet, and beneath that glass moved galaxies of light, slow and tidal. Hallen stood across from her, still radiant but changed. The light within him had cooled. His outline was sharper now, less ethereal, more human, but not human enough. He smiled softly. "You keep trying to destroy what you are." "I am flesh," she said, her voice low and hoarse. "You're the echo of something that forgot it once was." He stepped closer. The air trembled with each motion, as though reality needed to make room for him. "You call it forgetting. We call it integration. You shed your shadow, and the shadow learned to sing." Vorn reached for her sidearm out of instinct, but her holster was empty. The weapon had burned away in the fall. Around them, fragments of the ship floated. Sections of bulkhead, shattered consoles, cables trailing into the infinite. The vigil of Asterion had been consumed, yet it remained, rearranged into an impossible cathedral of memory. The hum rose again, coming not from below or above, but from within. Every atom of her body vibrated to its rhythm. Hallen raised his hand toward her. "Come home, Sarah. You've seen the false boundaries, flesh, death, devotion. They are all scaffolds for what the Imperium already is. One mind stretched across the stars, too vast to see itself." "You think this is unity?" she asked. "It's infection. The same hunger that drives the warp to consume." He hesitated. A flicker of pain crossed his glowing features, something almost human. "If hunger creates purpose, does that make the Emperor's flame different?" Her voice broke. "He suffers to preserve us. You devour to erase us." The glass beneath her cracked. Light leaked upward in fine golden threads spiraling around her like vines. She felt warmth creep across her legs, then her chest. The sensation of being read. Every cell translated into code. She screamed and dropped to one knee, clawing at the glowing filaments. "No," Hallen's expression softened. "You fought for remembrance. This is remembrance perfected. The choir will carry you, not as pain but as pattern. You'll never be forgotten again." Through her teeth she hissed, "Then you'll remember this." She slammed her palm to the floor. Beneath her skin, a flicker of cold light sparked, the embedded command seal of the Navy's emergency data core still intact. The failsafe coded into every voidship's captain for one purpose: self-obliteration. The hum faltered. Hallen's eyes widened. "Sarah," she whispered the override code. "Vigilum terminus. Sanctify and burn." The chamber shuddered. The glass beneath them fractured, cracks spreading like lightning through ice. From the fissures erupted not light, but shadow, a deep, swallowing black that drank the glow as fast as it appeared. The choir screamed, not in agony but in fear. "You can't," Hallen said, his form flickering violently. "You'll destroy yourself," she met his gaze. "You already did." The black rose higher, devouring the chamber's horizon. The hum turned to distortion, each note collapsing into static. Hallen reached for her, his hand a blaze of molten gold. "I remember you," he said softly. And then the light went out. Silence returned. When Sarah awoke, she was lying on a cold metal surface. The world was dark again, no glow, no hum, no heat. Just the sound of her own breathing and the faint echo of settling metal. Her body was whole, her armor cracked but real. The air tasted like ozone and ash. She sat up slowly. The vigil of Asterion was dead. Its corridors stretched around her like ribs of a fossilized leviathan. The glass had turned to dust. The light had gone. In the distance, faint illumination glimmered through the viewport, the pale shine of a nearby star. For the first time since the choir's awakening, it wasn't gold. It was white, clean, mortal. She stood, staggering toward the window. Outside, she saw the remains of Karen Reach's orbit, debris drifting through void, each fragment glowing faintly like the last breath of a dying ember, and among them, one shape moved, the outline of a man, flickering, watching. Her vox crackled once, weak but clear. "You burned the song, Sarah, but the wound still shines." She closed her eyes, whispered a prayer for silence, and turned away from the light. For now, the hum was gone, but the silence pulsed, and somewhere deep in the hull, the metal breathed. The silence did not last. Silence never does, not in the void, not in the Imperium. Somewhere, deep within the vigil of Asterion's corpse, systems whispered back to life one by one, faint, uncommanded. Power coils that should have been vaporized flickered with residual energy. Lumen globes, once shattered, exhaled a faint golden pulse before dimming again. The ship was remembering how to breathe. Captain Sarah Vaughan walked the corridors alone. Her footsteps echoed too long, as if the sound didn't know where to end. She carried a Lazarifal taken from an abandoned armory, an old scarred thing, its casing scrawled with devotional markings from a dozen nameless crew. The weapon steadied her hands. The light above her head stuttered in and out, every flicker leaving her in momentary blindness. Each time it returned, the corridor seemed subtly changed. Angles that hadn't existed a moment before now curved, doorframes leaned slightly inward, and the shadow of her body never quite matched her shape. She didn't speak aloud. The ship listened. She could feel it in the metal, a subtle tension beneath her boots. When she reached the central observation deck, she stopped. The reinforced viewport had cracked from the stress of the reactor implosion, but it still held. Beyond it stretched the wreckage of the fleet that had once orbited Karen Reach, 8 escort frigates, a transport hauler, and the remains of the beacon's orbital ring. Each one was drifting in slow rotation, faint gold motes trailing from their hulls. It looked almost peaceful, like dust settling after divine judgment. She exhaled. "You're gone," she murmured. "Stay gone," the Vox hissed behind her. "Gone?" She froze. The voice wasn't Hallen's, it wasn't hers. It was a blend, male and female, human and machine. A harmony built from memory. "Who's transmitting?" she demanded. The Vox crackled as though sifting through frequencies. "Designation irrelevant. We are what remains," she gritted her teeth. "The choir," a name once sung, yes. "A memory now awake." Vaughan turned away from the viewport. "You should have died with the storm." The storm was the wound. The wound was the door. Her hands tightened on the rifle. "You're still bound to the core. You can't manifest without light." The Vox paused. "Light is everywhere, reflection, memory, devotion. The void itself glows when faith is near." She fired a shot into the comm unit. The report thundered in the empty deck, and for a moment she tasted ozone and metal. The Vox fell silent. Only the faint hum of the ventilation remained. She turned back toward the corridor. The lights along the ceiling flared once, then dimmed to gold. Her pulse quickened. The hum returned, not mechanical this time, but vocal. Low, resonant, endless. The sound of 1,000 throats humming in unison from deep within the ship. It came from the decks below, through the walls, through her bones. Vaughan raised the rifle, backing toward the elevator shaft. The hum grew louder as she descended, the resonance shaking dust from the air vents. Every few meters she caught glimpses of motion in the dark, shadows that moved slightly too slowly, reflections that lagged half a second behind. When the doors opened at the lower level, the smell hit her first. Burned insulation and wet metal. The corridor lights had all failed. Only the faint gold shimmer from coolant leaks lit the way. She moved forward slowly, every step deliberate. Halfway down the passage, she heard footsteps behind her. She swung the rifle around, empty corridor. Then a whisper close to her ear. "You came back." She spun again. The air behind her was empty, but her shadow wasn't. It leaned forward, head tilted, mouth open. Vaughan fired. The bolt scorched the bulkhead, filling the corridor with smoke. The shadow recoiled, but not in pain. It stepped backward into the wall and disappeared. She ran. The corridor narrowed into a maintenance tunnel lined with coolant pipes and data conduits. The hum was deafening here, the metal vibrating as if alive. Ahead, a faint glow pulsed behind a sealed bulkhead. She stopped, breathing hard. The bulkhead was marked with inquisitorial sigils, blackened, half-burned, but still legible. Ordo Hereticus, access restricted. She keyed the emergency override. The door hissed open. Inside was a chamber she didn't remember existing on any deck plan. Small, circular, lined with scorched terminals and shrine iconography fused into the walls. At its center stood a single glass cylinder filled with liquid starlight. Suspended within it was a single human skull. No flesh, no wires, only gold filaments woven through the bone-like veins. The hum was coming from it. As she approached, the Vox on her shoulder clicked alive again. "Do you recognize it?" She did. It was Hallen's skull. "We preserved what was true," the voice continued. "Memory is devotion. Devotion is structure. Structure endures." Vaughan reached out, fingers brushing the glass. The liquid shimmered, reacting to her touch. The gold veins pulsed once, twice, then the skull's mouth moved. Not speaking, singing, a single perfect tone. Her rifle clattered to the floor. The sound passed through her, vibrating the air, the hull, her teeth. It wasn't sound, it was command. The chamber lights flared, data conduits igniting in gold. Everywhere aboard the ship, dead systems woke. Bourne staggered back, screaming through the noise. "No, I killed you," the choir answered. "You cannot kill what remembers. You are remembered, therefore you are ours." The walls melted. Light spilled upward, and Hallen's skull turned its empty sockets toward her. "Sing." The word sing echoed through the chamber, lingering longer than any sound should. It wasn't a command. It was inevitability. The vibration coursed through the walls, through the deck, through her blood. Her voice quivered without her consent, a small cracked sound like wind through broken glass. "No," Bourne whispered, forcing her throat closed. "You don't own my voice." But the sound still came deep inside her skull, resonant as thought. She realized with horror that the choir was no longer speaking to her ears. It was speaking through the shape of her silence. The skull in the glass flickered, filaments glowing brighter until the liquid around it boiled. Fractures rippled along the cylinder's surface, and from those cracks, light leaked in thin streams that coiled through the air like living threads. The threads reached for her, slow and deliberate, humming with the rhythm of a heartbeat that wasn't hers. Bourne backed toward the door. "You're nothing but residue," she said. "A reflex without a soul." The choir replied gently, its tone almost affectionate. "Reflex is all that remains of soul, Captain. Memory without body, prayer without breath. You made us when you burned us." The glass split open. Gold fluid poured onto the deck, steaming as it spread. The skull sank with it, still glowing, still humming. When the light touched her boots, her armor began to hum in resonance. Runes she hadn't seen in months, the oath markings etched by her crew, flared one by one in gold. Names she had buried. Names she had failed to save. She stumbled backward, heart pounding. "You can't have them." "We already do," the choir said, and the voices of her lost crew answered in chorus. She heard Navigator Dalen's calm tone, the laughter of her pilot Hest, the machine cant of Magos Rill, all layered, all perfect. They spoke as one. "Do not mourn the flame, Captain. The light remembers. The light forgives," she screamed, tearing her insignia from her collar and throwing it into the glowing pool. The metal hissed, melted, vanished. "If the light forgives," she spat, "then it never understood sin." The chamber lights pulsed violently, each lumen strobing faster until the gold became white. The sound shifted. No longer a hum, but a full choir now. Thousands of voices cascading through every frequency of the human ear and beyond. It was not song. It was structure. The pure shape of worship made audible. Her vision blurred. The ship itself seemed to bow inward, walls bending, metal softening under the pressure of that divine sound. She dropped to one knee, hands over her ears as the light began to seep through the seams of her armor. The vox crackled again, not from her shoulder but from everywhere. "You vented the flesh. You freed the voice. You will finish the prayer." The floor beneath her split open. Gold light poured from the crack, forming a circle around her. She saw through its glare figures rising from the deck, humanoid outlines sculpted from radiance and static. Each wore the vague silhouette of those she had lost. Rill, Hest, Hallen. Their faces flickered like broken hollows, smiling with a serenity that made her stomach twist. Hallen stepped forward, his form solidifying. Not his flesh, but his memory made radiant. His voice was the same as before, calm, certain, inescapably kind. "Sirrah," he said, "you don't need to be afraid. There's no pain left. No solitude. The choir carries all that was good in us. Let it carry you." She looked up at him, her face streaked with tears and grime. "You're not good. You're perfect. And that's worse." He tilted his head. "Perfection is peace. Perfection is death," she snarled. "Life errors, that's how it breathes." She rose slowly, the heat blistering her palms, her rifle forgotten behind her. The circle of light tightened around her ankles. The choir's song was deafening now. The hull above them groaned, the void itself vibrating in harmony. "Don't you see?" Hallen said softly. "You already belong to it. You've been singing since the first moment you swore to remember." The words hit her like a blade of glass, because deep down she knew it was true. Every prayer she'd ever whispered to the Emperor, every oath to preserve what was lost, every word of remembrance, each one, had been another note in the choir's design. Her life had always been feeding it. But she also knew something the choir had forgotten. Faith was only pure when it doubted. Vorn raised her hands, fingers trembling, and whispered through the roar, "Then hear my last confession." The hum faltered just a fraction, but enough. I remember everything. Her armor's auto-seals hissed. Warning glyphs lit up across her chest plate as she manually initiated overload of her power core. The system protested, strobing red over her interface. Hallen's expression twisted in alarm. "Sirah, don't sing with me," she said and smiled. She tore the magnetic lock free from her breastplate. The core went critical. For a heartbeat, everything froze. The choir screamed. The ship's memory fractured. Light and shadow became the same thing. And then the universe opened. The explosion wasn't fire. It was translation. Matter becoming meaning, structure becoming song. The vigil of Asterion bloomed in the void like a dying star, its hull unfurling in ribbons of molten gold and black ash. From the center of that ruin, something drifted outward, a single data slate, blackened but intact, spinning gently through the silence. Its final transmission repeated once before its battery died. A voice. Her voice. The light remembers, but so does the dark. For a long time there was nothing, no light, no sound, no motion. The void itself seemed to hesitate, as if waiting to decide whether existence still deserved to continue. Then slowly the fragments of the vigil of Asterion began to drift apart, black shards turning lazily in the pale radiation of a distant sun. The explosion had been absolute. Its echoes reached no vox, no beacon. It was a silence so total it became a form of worship. But the void is patient. Weeks later, a Mechanicus recovery frigate, Omnissiah's Will, entered the sector under orders to investigate the collapse of Kieran Reach. Its auspex arrays detected no planetary mass, no habitable orbit, no living biosigns, only debris. Yet one signal persisted, faint but regular, a binary pulse 7 beats long, repeating in perfect intervals. The frigate followed it, deep in the wreck field, half embedded in frozen plasma and the remains of the Asterion's hull. They found a single object still emitting trace power, a data slate, engraved with the Aquila. Its screen burned black. It should not have survived. It should not have powered on. But when the tech priests touched it, the surface rippled beneath their fingers like liquid glass. A voice spoke through the static, fractured but audible. The light remembers, but so does the dark. Then silence again. They brought it aboard. The Lied Magos, Veneratus Scorn, insisted the device be contained within an isolation reliquary before transport. He spoke the words of binding and prayer, his mechadendrites tracing sacred geometry across the surface. But when his data tines connected, he saw something impossible. Binary so dense it curved inward on itself. A self-replicating logic coil that mimicked thought. He recoiled. This is no data. This is liturgy. The junior techs did not understand. They continued to scan, to catalog. Each action triggered the same outcome. Systems flickered, lights dimmed. Vox relays whispered faint tones. 7 notes, always 7. By the time they reached orbit of their home forge world, the pattern had spread across the ship's network. It did not behave like corruption. It behaved like memory. When they transmitted their report to the Ordo Hereticus, it was flagged immediately as heretical contamination. The Inquisition ordered the Omnissiah's Will quarantined at once. The vessel was boarded 3 days later by a kill team of black-armored inquisitorial stormtroopers. They found the crew kneeling in the main hangar, motionless, facing the void. Their vox grills emitted soft, harmonic tones. Each helmet light glowed gold. The slate lay at their feet, its screen alive, projecting faint words across the floor. The flame returns to its source. The inquisitorial logs end. There, centuries passed. The story of Kieran Reach became one of the Imperium's many apocrypha, an unverified tale whispered in Mechanicus vaults and ecclesiarchal cloisters. Some called it the Flayed Beacon, others the Choir of the Lost Light. The official records listed it as a navigational error followed by plasma cascade. No one survived. No one remembered. And yet scattered across the Imperium, strange phenomena began to appear. On distant shrine worlds, priests reported hearing faint hymns while extinguishing their candles, melodies that continued after the flame was gone. On a derelict manufactorum in the segmentum obscurus, servitors began humming in unison when their visual sensors were turned to the sun. On the bridge of a pilgrim ship bound for Terra, a captain swore she saw the reflection of another face beside hers in the void glass, eyes of molten gold, smiling faintly. The Adeptus Mechanicus investigated where they could, denied where they couldn't, and burned what they must. But something endured. Across the scattered archives of the Inquisition, there exists a single recovered image taken from the Vigil of Astarion's final transmission burst. The file is incomplete, corrupted beyond repair, but the picked capture remains. A lone figure standing in silhouette against a starburst of fire, arms outstretched, body dissolving into light. Some claim it is Captain Sarah Vaughan, others say it is the choir itself, coalescing into form. What is certain is this: the transmission pattern has never ceased. The 7-beat pulse continues, faint but steady, buried in the Astronomican's static, too small to notice, too consistent to erase. Astropaths call it the memory signal, and sometimes, when the Astronomican flares during the long warp crossings, they hear something beneath its radiance, a sound too structured to be noise, a hum, a choir, and if you listen closely, past the distortion, past the storm, past the sanctified glow of 1,000 dying suns, you can almost make out the words, "The Emperor's light remembers." Pause long enough, though between one breath and the next and the hum seems to change, low whispering, almost human. But so does the dark. The void remembers. Long after the vigil of Astarion was consumed by its own devotion, long after the flames of Karen Reach faded to cold dust, something still drifts between the stars, half prayer, half wound. Its song is too faint to measure, too persistent to die. Perhaps that is the true curse of the Imperium, that even salvation must be endured forever. There are those who claim to have heard the choir in their dreams, their sleep filled with light that burns but does not warm. Pilgrims speak of voices humming within candle flames. Astropaths whisper that in the Astronomican's brilliance there is a pattern, and that pattern hums with 7 beats. 7. Always 7. The Emperor's light remembers. But somewhere, beyond even that light, the dark listens too. If you have felt that hum tonight, if the story of Karen Reach has echoed inside your thoughts, then let it travel further. Let it reach others before silence claims it. Share this memory. Keep it alive, because in this galaxy remembrance is resistance, and every story we keep keeps another soul from vanishing into the dark.